All right, you guys, so we have more developments to the situation that I discussed yesterday that has to do with two additional victims coming forward about their alleged experiences with the Real High Twitter community moderator that has been quote unquote exposed for inappropriate behavior. On top of that, the owner of the community has officially stepped down and also was trying to almost like censor me so I couldn't make a video. We're going to get into that in a second here, but there's lots to discuss. And I do have to clarify for legal reasons that this video is just alleged at this time. Nothing has been proven in a court of law. I am simply just reiterating stories that have been told by alleged victims regarding their situations and experiences, allegedly, with this former Rural High Twitter community moderator. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Rural High Twitter community is a community that is run and operated by fans. It is not at all, affiliated with Rural High in any way. Now, up until yesterday, the owner of the Rural High Twitter community was a Rural High fan. Now, again, just like all my videos, I don't mention names, not because I'm trying to protect anybody, but because I feel like it's important to not incite hate or harassment towards any specific individual. But regardless, basically, yesterday, I was scrolling on Twitter and I came across this post that was written by, I guess, a moderator. I'm not quite sure, but basically they were saying, like, by the way, Pommy, the owner of the group does not give you consent to use their words or talk about them. Hey, babe, that doesn't matter. You know what? First of all, why would you even put that statement out before I even made my video? Like, it's bizarre to try and like silence somebody before they even have an opportunity to talk about it. Why do you not want people talking about the fact that someone that you had involved in your community was a known, allegedly inappropriate person with children? Why would you not want people to talk about that? Why do I not have quote unquote consent to talk about the things that you have stated in regards to that situation? Why don't you want people knowing about it? Why do I have to stay quiet? And so, of course, like any logical person, I take a screenshot and I send it to my lawyer and I say, hey, is this like legally viable? They literally laughed. No, it's not. So first things first, I don't need your consent to talk about something that you did online. So let's start off by clarifying that, which I'm not usually one to get angry, but like when I saw that, I'm like, who do you think you are to tell me that I can't talk about something where you made a mistake and you're taking ownership for that mistake? And my last video was very respectful. And you want to try and silence me before I even have a chance to talk? That's suspicious. That's weird. Okay. But anyways, what ended up happening was their mods were all up in my comments on Twitter being like, you can't talk about this. By the way, Pommy, people in the Broadhead Twitter community, they hate you. All this sort of stuff. I'm like, babe, I don't care if people hate me. That's not going to stop me from talking about something that is very important because other people are afraid to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, that's the point of my channel. A commentary channel's whole point is not to be liked by you. I don't care what you think about me. It matters what I'm talking about, and it's important that stuff is brought to light. And I just think it's very bizarre that the owner was trying to prohibit me from bringing this stuff to light, which little sneak peek or tidbit for you guys, it does not matter if you say I don't consent. Once you post something online and it's something you have said in your own words, anybody can use that content in a commentary video legally. That's what fair use is. So anyways, but basically I was sent an email actually by somebody who is advocating for two alleged victims in the situation yesterday afternoon, and they basically said that the victims both gave me permission to make a video talking about their situations. I did actually reach out to the original victim, which asked that I do not talk about their situation, so if you're watching this video and I don't discuss their situation, that is why, because I want to respect obviously their privacy, but the two newest victims did give me consent to talk about the situation. Now, before we get into their whole situation, which I am going to have to be kind of careful what I say regarding the document, but I will link the person's Twitter who posted the document so you guys can go read it in full if you would like. But basically, this statement, I guess, was made by the former Rural High Twitter community manager, which again, doesn't matter if you don't give me consent to talk about a mistake that you made, babe. It's allowed. That's what fair use is. They say the server will be closing down and I'm working on moving ownership for the Rural High Twitter community to someone else. Finally, thank you everyone for a wonderful 3 years. I'm so sorry I let y'all down. Before I go, I want to say that I never ever meant to defend what he did. I know by reminding him again, I enabled him and had my hand in his behavior being brushed off, but please understand that that I was incredibly weirded out by him too and was equally confused as to why the accusations were swept away so easily. Which, not trying to be mean to this person, although they have agitated me, and I'm gonna be honest, the fact that they were trying to censor me before I even spoke does explain why there was consistently death threats left up in the Rural High Twitter community, because obviously the owner had an inherent dislike for my channel. Interesting, very bizarre. And when you guys say that, us talking poorly about members doesn't impact our moderation ability, it seems like it does when you have biases between what content you keep up. When someone says something negative about you, you're very quick to take it down and ban them. But when someone is inherently sending death threats to another content creator, that can stay up. Excuse me? Anyways, but right off the bat, it seems a little bit like an accountability shifting, like, oh, I don't know why everybody brushed under the rug. Yes, I agree that the mob mentality when you have a situation like this can make you think this stuff isn't as important as you think. But at the end of the day, you are your own person. I found this person is an adult. You have the cognitive ability to understand, hey, this is inappropriate. This should not have happened. And especially since you were in the position of power that everybody looked up to, you ultimately had the final say. And I know maybe you're scared, you weren't sure it was going to happen. But at that point, then you need to file a police report. If you're that afraid of this person online, go to the police. You know what I mean? Like, there is things that you can do, and I'm not trying to like necessarily say, oh, it's so easy to get over it. But at the same time, the way that I protect myself is I retained a lawyer. That's what I do. When you make content online and when you're afraid of people, you use the legal system to help protect yourself. And I feel like that's something that you could have done, or just gone to the police or spoken to somebody who is actually in a position of power in the real world that could help you protect your data and your information in case of retaliation, like they're trying to hint to here. They go on to say, I know I could have spoken out, but seeing as he was back to being friends with everyone, and even people who had previously blocked him, unbadged him, etc., were letting him be, I went along with the impression that the situation was talked out, and I was afraid to be the one to bring it up again due to the threats and risks. Regardless, it was cowardly of me to do, and I take responsibility for having my hand in silencing the victim. I should have been the one to stand out against him, ignore the excuses, and call out the weird behavior when it was shown, not hide and go against my judgment and fall into the belief that it was sorted. My heart goes out to her, and I do hope she can get far away from him. I never meant to victim blame her, and I am so sorry for my words and were worded so harshly and cold. It was never my intention to invalidate or hurt her. I wanted him to realize he was taking advantage of her no matter what his excuse was and what he was trying to play it off as. It was insensitive and harmful for me to speak on it the way that I did. And then they also made like a follow-up post, I guess. I just learned there's now 3 victims. I'm so sorry to everyone involved. I should have looked more into the situation. I know how much harm he really caused, and I'm so sorry for allowing something like that in the community. I would never let him back had I known what I have learned this week. Again, I'm so sorry. Which I do feel like they are genuinely sorry, but at the same time, you would have never let him back had you known, but you did know to a degree. You did know that this stuff was going on to a degree. Not every single tiny nitpitty aspect, but I think what's also important here is that a bunch of moderators who are affiliated with this Twitter community have been all up in my comments being like, oh, well, it's not our fault that the victims didn't report it to us. What? Like, that is like the most victim blaming thing I've ever heard in my entire life. If you already know there's allegations or rumors that this person's inappropriate and you continue to platform them, you are complicit in anything that happens afterwards. And what's shocking to me is that there's just such a disregard for how serious this was, and just like allowing someone to continue to exist in a position where they have so much power, which we'll see by reading some of these victim statements. One of the victims was targeted by this person because they were a moderator. It was directly because of their role as a moderator that this person was able to target a child. Like, what people don't understand about this is mind-blowing to me. Like, what the heck is going through people's minds? Now, regardless of my thoughts on the owner, I think that based on the threads that I've seen and the way that their moderators have been trying to like get at me on Twitter and tell me that everybody hates me and that I'm terrible and that I don't have a right to talk about this, then why are people advocating for victims coming to me asking me to talk about it? Like, this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It seems like they don't want people bringing this to light, which it isn't my intention to cancel you further, hence why I'm not showing your name. But it's to explain, like, this is not appropriate, and just the way that you're trying to make content creators feel like they don't have a right to speak about something that has been posted publicly is very bizarre. Now, this is a document regarding 2 victim statements. Now, I do have to clarify, the initial victim that came out, again, has requested I don't talk about their situation, so that's why that is not included in this video, but know that there are 3 victims, allegedly, right? And I am going to be careful the way that I word this and kind of just like cutting out words. We are going to be calling the moderator Z. That's the word we're going to be using for the moderator that has been accused of this kind of behavior. Now, I do have to skip over some parts because it may be sensitive, but I will link this person's Twitter so you guys can look at the document from their Twitter if you wish. Basically to say, first thing first, we want to let you guys know Z is more dangerous than we think. We've had numerous people come forward to us about Z blanking them, stalking them, and harassing them, and whatsoever. We are here to speak the truth once and for all about how horrible he is, and he needs to be gone. As one of the stories has been exposed, there's, I don't know, more to go. This document will show all the proof we got and the information we got. No names will be mentioned. Please, if you have more, let us know. Our DM requests are on. There's 4 people in this account, and they will help you whenever they can. The document may contain triggers for people no NSFW or Gormit shared. More things will be added later on. And I do have to be clear, I am going to have to not show certain messages and stuff, hence why I'm going to link the document down below for you guys to see the full scope, because I want to make sure you guys have the ability to read it through completely by yourself. So they go on to say this is, I guess, the first victim's situation, which both victims, I got screenshots of them saying, yes, it was okay if I spoke about this, but we're not identifying the victims. This is victim, we'll call them number 2, because number 1 has already been pretty vocal. They say, we got a DM from someone and they sent us a message explaining how Z messaged the victim after they were banned from the Royal High Twitter community. Z decided to add them on Discord after no issue yet. They were just talking about how the ban was unfair and the victim didn't see anything wrong with them talking about it. They started to do a deeper convo and it was followed by Z, age 20, asking the victim's age, 17, and he knew the victim's age already, a bit weird. And then this is a screenshot of what the victim has stated to the person making this document. They said, it started with Z noticing I got banned from Royal High on Twitter. He had made a small reply, then right after that, I got a friend request on Discord from him. I didn't question how he got my Discord since it's pretty public on my social media platforms, and I saw that I had mutuals with him. I had forgotten when I followed him back, but apparently I did, and Twitter, so I decided to accept. The first things we talked about was, of course, the ban and how unfair it was for me. It developed into a conversation of how long we had been playing Royal High for, to which he asked how old I was. I plainly told him I was 17 at the time. He knew very well how old I was. Now, something that's important to note here is that this person was reaching out to this person because of their powerful role as a moderator for the Royal High Twitter community. It's not just because this person was a random individual. This person was in a position of power because the power that was allotted to them by the community owner. And so, I don't know, like, just like the weird, like, it's just bizarre to me. And this is like proof that giving someone a position of power is a very important thing that you need to value and do background checks, because their ability to have power in this community is what enabled them to talk to people that were not of age. Not saying it's the community owner's fault. It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is using the label of a moderator for the Royal High Twitter community gave them this sort of professionalism and trustworthiness that they shouldn't have had, right? They say, how old are you if you don't mind me asking? They say, I'm 17, not much older, but... And then Z responds, oh, honestly, not bad, Lamal. The victim says, people call me old on VC, and I'm like, nuh-uh. And then Z says, I turned 23 days ago, so I feel like old now, but and that was in 2024 on, it would have been October 28th that was sent. So that's like 2 years ago. Not quite. It just turned 2026, but you know what I mean? Like a year and a half. That's not a long time. So now this person's older than 20. I turned 17 in August. I'm a 2004 kid, October 25th. They go on to say, afterwards, they just talked about themselves and learning more about each other without any alarms ringing in the victim's mind. The next morning, Z decided to show a commission that he got from an artist. He started mentioning he has the crush on a friend and told the victim. The victim didn't feel uncomfortable or anything and thought that Z wouldn't say any romantic stuff or anything that way towards them, since Z liked someone in his age range. Now, there is some like DMs here, which I don't think they're super necessarily relevant because it's just them talking about the crush. I'm going to say, they talked a few more times about the interaction, nothing big. The victim mentioned that Z may have had some eyebrow raising stuff, but didn't want to question him since they thought they were overacting. In the conversation, screenshots below, Z did some weird stuff, saying he'd take the victim towards a dark hour manner, saying, I love you, and etc. And this is what the victim said. We talked a few more times after that, nothing really major, and he said a few things that raised an eyebrow now, but I never questioned, since I could have just been overacting. And then there's these screenshots where Z sends them this dark horror manor thing, I guess. Should I buy a ticket for this? Dare I? And the victim says, oh yes. And Z says, if you were here, I would take you with me to do that. And then Z says, unless I feel evil. And then the victim says, the person, and then Z says, I do whatever I'm in the mood for. I love you. And then the person says, got it. Very interesting. Like, saying, like, I love you is what that means to someone who is a child. Very bizarre. Following this, Z started venting about next towards the victim. They used someone on Twitter as well, but no names were mentioned. The victim had a positive and good relationship with blank that is mentioned in the screenshots below. Which, this is something that frequently people do to try and garner trust between a victim and themselves, which I'm not necessarily confirming or denying the allegations, but I do just want to clarify that this is a pretty I don't know, this is a pretty textbook case of what these people will do is that they'll trauma dump and they will tell you a bunch of things about themselves to make them seem vulnerable so that you'll then be vulnerable, and then they play off your vulnerabilities to get personal information on you to basically trap you in a sort of relationship, right? Z says, like, once we argued a lot about badges a few times, and then the victim says, yikes, are they an influencer or? And then Z says he got really mad at blank after the Royal High Crown Royalty update because blank didn't tell him whenever he was in badge holder server, although my ex asked him to. Lindsay says nope, and I told blank everything, and he got super mad, so they both grew a distance towards each other, and I was stuck in the middle. And notice how Z is painting themselves as a victim here. That's also something that's very common in these kinds of situations, where the perpetuator or the alleged aggressor is somebody who is always a victim of everything. Oh, I'm a victim of this. Oh, this person treats me poorly. Oh, nobody likes me. I'm all by myself. You're the only person who will speak to me. Like, stuff like that, which is very, very textbook. They go on to say, I don't know, they're just kind of talking about stuff. The victim was very uncomfortable by this, since the victim knew blank and didn't see anything wrong with them. The victim wanted to say something, but decided not to since Z was already venting about it, and the victim just made the conversation die out as fast as they could. After the victim said they'll go to sleep. After that happened, the victim sent Z a My Hero Academia meme that they thought it was funny, but Z didn't take it as a funny joke and decided to direct the KYS joke towards them. Z wouldn't stop saying that the victim tried brushing it off multiple times after Z said something like that. The victim was still a kid, and in their head they were trying to make an excuse for him and kept joking back. The victim was very uncomfortable whenever this happened. And so I guess there was a meme that was sent, and Z was trying to make it sound like it was directed at him. Very bizarre. Also, again, the victim complex of these people, where they try to make you feel bad. Could you pick up some... I don't know what's going on. Crying? Lol. I don't know what's going on. Hi! And then this Z person says KYS. Jump off a clipping KYS. Let's do it together. Which is, I don't know, like, I know some people say this stuff as a joke, but it just seems like bizarre to be telling people to KYS, which I'm a little bit confused here. Was the meme sent by the victim or by Z? Because now they're saying KYS to each other, so I'm not quite sure. Let's not give that to blanks. Let's go home and watch Disney movies with popcorn and juice. And then Z says yes and cuddle while doing so. The blanks would be so pissed. Which, why are you talking about cuddling with a child? Z said that he'll cuddle with the victim while watching movies. Very, very weird. Z also said holding hands in gay fashion. Before that, obviously he was talking about some romantic sort of way. The victim did not reply directly towards it and tried to be platonic about it. Even after all this time, they still do not know each other well enough. They just talk about general daily life stuff such as gaming, etc. Then one night the victim tells Z goodnight, and Z replies the most weirdest ways. Z started using pet names such as my love, meaning my love, and dear, which this is something that you will see repeated in other DMs that have been leaked, which is interesting. This is like a pattern. That's really weird to use against a minor, and the victim felt very uncomfortable by this. The victim didn't really reply and just said sup, trying to avoid it, whatever, and since he may have meant it in friendly whatsoever. Which, again, like, you could see, okay, I'm actually so tired, I'm going to sleep, good night, and then Z says, good night, my love, hugs, hi, dear, which these are, like, notoriously names that you use when you're in a relationship, not with a child. And I know a lot of people say, oh, this person was 17. It does not matter. I think the biggest thing at play here, and people will be like, oh, age of consent, and playing around with that stuff, regardless what you want to label this as, it's inappropriate. Specifically because Z is in a position of power. It doesn't really matter that the person was 17 years old, and I've seen people trying to brush it off as, oh, it's not that bad. It does not matter. Z was in a position of power, and they used that position of power to get into a situation where they could talk to this underage person privately and then begin to trauma dump and say inappropriate things like, this is not okay. Obviously, the victim thought it didn't mean anything since Z had mentioned he liked someone before. The victim sent Z a message on Twitter post saying, this is so me. Z replied, do you like boys named Chan? This is weird to say towards a minor. Chan is usually used for female friends, babies, and children and lovers. Which, I'm not super familiar with that kind of lingo. Then they go on to say, the victim had set their status in Discord too. I just want to kiss a boy. Is that too much to ask for? As a silly joke. And boy, oh boy, guess who messaged them right after? Z, saying, you never get a boy to kiss towards the victim, which is an incredibly weird thing to say. Sorry, dear, anything else you want? After the victim had changed their Twitter profile picture into a Christmas theme to celebrate the winter season and did not post about it nor let Z know he changed it, not much time after Z messaged him noting that he saw the change. The victim had stated that they were not active at all on Twitter, meaning Z had been checking the victim's profile whenever he could. Really weird. Not to mention Z had coincidentally saw an old pic of the victim as well and could immediately tell their profile change. The victim had asked Z if they were stalking them and said yes right after and said, I love you, and name, will you marry me? It's extremely weird to say and mention to someone like that in a situation like this. The victim said no to both of these. Christmas profile picture, yay, says Z. The victim says, what? And Z says, on Twitter, you silly. And the victim says, help, are you stalking me? And Z says, yes, I'm in love with you. The victim says, what? And Z says, will you marry me? Which I understand, like, sometimes people will, like, joke back and forth like this, so is, like, important to keep that in mind. But at the same time, if the victim here is saying this made them feel inappropriate, I feel like a lot of people are taking this screenshot specifically and saying, well, it doesn't seem like they're uncomfortable in this. It doesn't matter. When you're with someone that's in a position of power, you're not going to outwardly say, hey, what are you doing? Like, you have to recognize the power imbalances here and how that impacts the way that you respond to stuff because you're afraid of retaliation. The victim then explains why they stopped talking. Not even going to explain the next sentence because you can already see what they say. In all the screenshots, you can see me trying to joke back. I remind you that I was still a kid and truly believed he was just socially challenged or really thought it was a normally joking. I never said anything about my unease because of my issues when it comes to confrontation. Eventually, I kind of just stopped talking to him altogether and ignored him when he tried to start conversations. I just couldn't shake the weird feeling his comments gave me no matter the excuses I tried to create in my head. I wasn't ever going to be vocal about these messages because, again, I'm not a confrontational person. Usually I would rather just die with the knowledge that I could have avoided all this by not accepting his friend request, but I saw people speaking up about him. It made me want to add my 2 cents to the mix because even if he didn't do much harm to me overall, it was still strange to talk to a minor this way. I don't hate him, but I do think he 100% needs to be evaluated for something. Which, what's really unfortunate is victims saying like they feel like it wasn't that bad. It doesn't matter how bad or whatever it is compared to other people. At the same time, you are a victim and this is not appropriate. It doesn't matter how far it went or whatever. It's still incredibly impactful when a person who's in a position of power abuses that power to get into your personal life and to basically make you feel vulnerable. Like, it's inappropriate. Now, this next person says, this is the second victim story. We've gotten full permission to post about this. Reminder that we do not condone anything he's done towards the victims. We shall start the second expose the victim statement. The victim says, I met Zebek during the spring of 2024-2025. I believe we met through Twitter at the time when I had it. Came across the profile due to an outfit I liked, and we kind of started becoming friends on Discord too. I deleted Twitter because I had no use for it anymore, and saying that there was so much drama within the community there, I decided it would be better for me to not overwhelm myself. Since I have autism, I didn't want to stress myself out with this online BS or anything that could damage me mentally. Me and him talked and called for months on end. Everything seemed fine. Everything felt fine. It wasn't until the situation that I started to relook at our friendship, and well, you get the idea. I've been in a relationship and still am. At the start, me and Z's friendship, he knew that. Things kind of took a slight turn when I looked back on our messages to discover that I was supposed to be a secret friend. I'm 18. I met him when I was 17. He was 20 to 21. I might be an adult now too, but when I was 17, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. He called me princess, babe, baby, bae, sweetheart, you get the idea. I wasn't uncomfortable about it first because I know friends joke around platonically, but it got to a point where certain messages felt off. There will be screenshots provided. I was on the brink of becoming an adult when I met him, which is still a minor. Even as an adult, you can get groomed. It's just for me, I didn't see it until later when I truly learned about why he didn't fully tell me things. I would understand why he was worried about stuff on Twitter, but to an extent, I was told our friendship had to be a secret due to my age at the time, and the same reason he was being canceled for. Which, this is something very common among these kinds of people, is that they'll make it a secret. Nobody will understand. It's just you and me. Like, nobody else is going to understand our dynamic. They're going to judge you. They're going to judge us. Like, this is textbook kind of behavior, which is so infuriating. They want to say, even if I was 17, I think he was worried people would call him out for moving to older / under his age group. I never understood or fully knew certain things. I never met his friends, not once. No matter how badly he wanted me to, I never met them. He did tell me about them, his obsessions, people he missed or hated. Trauma dumping, venting, always on repeat. Which, again, this is similar to the last victim, where there's this trauma dumping, there's this personal connection that they're trying to garner, which is just so inappropriate. I didn't fully notice I was being groomed until the entire situation came out again. He would not say stuff that felt off, uncomfortable, sensitive on the phone or over text, which made me not want to respond at times. He would, say stuff like that. I had to remind him that he was gay and I was taken. He kept telling me that they were jokes and he was kidding, but it never felt that way. It felt like he was joking then, but now it feels like I was a target for his behavior. The nicknames, the catcalling, the jokes about being together, the jokes of living together, if my stuff with my partner didn't work out, etc. I found the best to leave the evidence to share my story, even if it's all online. It's still scary, horrible, and life-threatening. For context, these are pictures. The one with the server tag is Z, which it says, I make an official statement. If I was straight, I would choose you, the end, or bye. I'm so close. I was being nice, and he said that, which I didn't find weird at the time or mention. He said it, but looking back, I think he was trying to do something. Ain't for that religion life. So much chatting up to do OMG swear. So you're in love with me, that's nice. So apparently that's what Z's saying. Real I'd get everything. No, I'd get you everything. Out shopping lols. I wish I could be shopping with you. Just like stuff like this. I love you, baby girl. Don't worry, baby girl. It's alrighty. Again, the nicknaming didn't seem like an issue. I think the names he calls me similar to the victim is Princess Babe and Baby, which now that I look at is kind of nerve-wracking because I have a partner. So regardless, basically there's a lot more messages about this kind of stuff that have been put in this document, which I don't necessarily want to put on YouTube just because of like the nature of YouTube's moderation, stuff like that. But regardless, this to me, although this hasn't been proven in a court of law, and I've emphasized that several times throughout the video that this is all just alleged, at the same time, I find it very difficult to not believe the various victims that have come forward when they all depict and reflect and share very similar behaviors. Like, how is it that these three people would know the exact same stuff unless it happened to them? You know what I mean? Like the usage of the nicknames, the exact same nicknames, the trauma dumping, the venting, it seems like explosive behavior at times where this person would get very angry with them, which is something that is also very characteristic of these kinds of relationships. It is just very, very alarming. And what's unfortunate too is that a lot of people discredit these experiences because they're like, oh, how could you not see it? How could you not understand? But the truth is, this stuff happens so slowly. And now as someone who has a personal experience with this kind of stuff, like it happens so slowly, and even the smartest people will fall into it because you don't realize it's happening until you're too far into it. It starts off as a platonic friendship, you're just talking, you think you've met an online friend, and then as you garner more trust with that person, they then start asking personal questions, you share personal information, and it kind of goes back and forth. Then it gets to a point where they start being inappropriate, but now they have personal information about you, so it feels like, can I leave? Are they going to leak this information? It makes you feel unsafe, and that's what these people are betting on, is that they can get information about you and kind of force you into a relationship that then you end up divulging personal details to them, and you have this sort of almost like relationship emotional attachment to this person where you're afraid they're going to share your information, your trauma, details of stuff that's happened to you if you cut ties to them, and that's what they are betting on. And it's really unfortunate. This is not just a singular experience, but something that's apparently happened to 3+ individuals. Like, this is so incredibly concerning. And I do have to emphasize, at the root cause of it, I think a lot of people are placing blame on the owner of the community. I don't think it's inherently their fault this stuff occurred, but they did play a hand in this stuff happening, as we can see through these situations where this person saw that Z was in a position of power in this community, and that's how their conversations kind of started. So, altogether, I do think that most of the responsibility here falls onto Z, obviously. That's the person that was allegedly committing these sorts of actions, so at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to manage their behavior. But at the same time, I do feel like, especially with just me talking about this, there's been a lot of community moderators that are very quick to defend the owner, that are calling me names, they're telling me I can't talk about this, that I don't have a right to talk about it, which my lawyer says is not correct. But you know what I mean? Like, there's just so much back and forth of people, and people victim blaming or trying to throw other people under the bus, when in reality there just needs to be accountability. And I do think that the message to a degree does take accountability that I read earlier in the video, but personally I feel like a lot of those mods for the Real High Twitter community currently need to be taken off, because there is one moderator that was going on about how it's the victim's fault for not coming to them and telling them about this stuff, and someone else who's telling me that I can't talk about it because I'm a drama channel, which no, I'm a commentary channel, babe. But regardless, there's a lot of, I would just say, corruption in my opinion, where people do not take this seriously, which has inherently caused this person to have the power to continue to exploit people, allegedly, which is really unfortunate. So regardless, I do think there needs to be a massive overhaul of this community if it's going to be on Twitter. And I think that, this has really damaged the reputation of Twitter communities when it comes to the gaming space, because this is something that has happened multiple times. There's been other allegations from other moderators for being bullies or for being, unkind to their people. And it's just like, why is it that people in positions of power continuously get to continue to hold those positions of power regardless of the accusations that come out against them? There needs to be stricter policies, stricter regulations, and rules and background checks performed on the people that you are giving power over, essentially children. So regardless, I do think there's a lot of effort and work that needs to be done to the Real High Twitter community for it to potentially come back. A change in ownership is not going to fix all the problems, because there are moderators that are still in that team that are not, or have not handled this appropriately, and have continuously victim blamed and essentially made fun of people who this has happened to. So regardless, I do think there's a lot to be learned from everybody involved in the situation, aside from the victims. Like, the victims are the only people who are 100% like, there is nothing that anybody should be saying to these people about the situation, like, oh, you should have known, or, because I've seen some people trying to say that. Like, that's incredibly, like, just so inappropriate in this situation. People need to understand the stories of these victims, which I will again link the Twitter account that posted this in the description below for you guys to go and review the document yourself if you'd like to. But regardless, this is incredibly alarming. And I really do hope that people on the Twitter community will take a stand against this kind of behavior and will not allow moderators to continue to moderate that are problematic and inappropriate. So regardless, let me know your thoughts on this down below. How do you personally keep yourself safe online? And with that in mind, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!